Alright y'all, part 1 of how I went from CO to felon. August 2023, I accepted a position at a corrections facility that housed county and state inmates, and they also had a Class D outside workers program as well. These would be the inmates that you see picking up trash off the side of the road or doing various projects around the city. Whether it would be they get transferred to us for behavioral problems or just a general transfer. So when you get hired, you have to go through 2 weeks of training. And the first week is classroom. That's when you get certified from your taser and your OC. And then you have on-floor training, which is where you shadow the other officers and you learn policy and you learn procedure. I was really confident when I got to my on-floor training because I was picking up everything super quick and I knew that I could do my job effectively. Everything was going good for the first couple months. You know, I started out 12-hour shifts, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then we moved to 8-hour shifts where I was on second shift for 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. Sometimes I would work till 3 a.m., sometimes I would work till 7 a.m., just depending on what the needs of the facility were. After a couple days we got these transfers, I noticed that there was an inmate. We'll call him Hunter. He would always stay up late on the nights that I worked till 3 a.m., and that's when he would go to sleep was when I left. Well, every night after tray service, we would do trash detail, which is you take 5 Class D inmates outside and you throw away the kitchen trash. You have 1 officer, 5 inmates. I was unlocking the gate one night and he come up behind me and stuck something in my pocket. I immediately turned around and told him he needed to stay 6 feet away from me at all times possible, and that if he came up behind me again, I would write him up. And if he got wrote up, then that means he would be kicked out of the Class D program and have to go back to the regular pods. My birthday rolls around in October. Everyone wishes me a happy birthday. My dad starts acting really shady, and I'm asking him what's going on, and he said, "It's your birthday and we're not talking about it." 3 weeks later, on October 24th, my dad asked me to FaceTime him, and I did. He started crying over FaceTime and told me that he was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer and that he was scared. I started crying immediately because my dad was the only parent that I had left and I didn't want to lose him, and me and him were super close. He was my #1 support throughout everything in my life. Anytime I needed something, he was there. That was my dad. So I go into work the next day and he's asking me why I look upset, and I told him it was nothing, don't worry about it, and I just brushed it off and I walk around and do my rounds. Trash detail comes at night and he comes out and he was like, "I seriously need you to tell me what's going on. I can tell you're upset. Just talk to me." And I was like, "No, this isn't appropriate. You know, I shouldn't be talking to you about this." Finally, one day I broke down. And I was like, "Look, my dad was hiding something from me for 3 weeks and I finally found out what it is. And he has cancer and he's scared, and so am I." He immediately told me that he would be there for me through anything, and that if I ever needed him, I could text him on the number that he keeps trying to give me for his device. I told him I appreciated his kind words and I went on. November comes around and I'm getting pulled into the captain's office and I'm so confused. I don't know what's going on. And I just want to say, at this point in time, there was nothing going on with me and this inmate, and it was strictly an inmate-CEO relationship, if you want to call it that. So they tell me they have allegations against me and they ask me about him. And I told them straight up, you know, there's nothing going on. I'm not jeopardizing my future for an inmate. I have kids. I can't afford to go to prison. And they said, "Okay, well, we're going to have you work up front until we figure out what's going on." And I said, "Okay." So I started working up front, learning booking, being a main, doing really good. So they called me into the office one day and they're like, "Hey, we couldn't find anything against you, so we're going to let you go back to your normal duties." I said, "Thank you, I appreciated it," and I went back to my normal position. When I seen him at trash detail that night, he comes up to me, "Man, I told you I was solid. They ain't going to get nothing out of me. I promise. I want you, I want this is what my heart wants." And I was like, "No, we're not doing it. I'm already in a relationship with my children's father. I'm not crossing that line." Well, this guy continues to write me letters every single day that I work. And if I had my 2 days off, when I come back, he would have 3 letters for me. He had a trustee that he knew he could trust that would deliver the letters to me even when I was working up front. I threw all these letters away and rejected his advances. December comes around and it's a whole different story. Stay tuned, follow me for part 2. Okay, y'all.
Alright, welcome back, Messy Family. So this is a 10-part series. I do have it all here. Now I did make some cuts because I know you guys like when I make cuts because sometimes the videos do drag through. So I made some cuts in the video just to help the video flow a lot better. So let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to like, comment, share this video, save it for later, whatever you guys need to do. But make sure you make it to the end of this video because we're going to wrap it up together. But let's keep going into it. I think I can already tell where this is heading to, but let's keep watching.
It's time for part 2. So December of that year was a really rough month for me. I started having some health issues. I'm type 2 diabetic. I've been diagnosed since October of 2020. And one night I was working and I couldn't drink enough water. My mouth was always dry. I had to pee a lot. So I went to the nurse. The nurse checked my sugar and it was so high that the monitor couldn't read it. So she gave me some metformin and we checked it again a little bit and it went down to 500 something. So that night I ended up going from work to the emergency room, sent by medical. They forced me to go. I didn't want to go. I wanted to finish out my shift and then go. So I went, they got my sugar down. My supervisor came in and checked on me to make sure I was okay. Gave me a ride home. I took the next day off. And then everything was okay for a couple weeks. I watched my sugar intake. I drank more water. I watched what I ate. Also, my supervisor told the kitchen trustees that if he seen anyone give me sweet tea, that they would be fired as a trustee. So there's also that. And then I got the opportunity to test for sergeant. It was the Friday before the week of Christmas. I was sick. I was feeling like crap. So I went into the test and then I went to the emergency room the next day and spent the whole week of Christmas in the house because I had the flu. It was the first time I'd ever had the flu in my entire life and I was miserable. So the whole time I'm out for the flu, which is from the week of Christmas to the 1st of January, I went back the 2nd of January. I couldn't get this dude off my mind. I was dreaming about him, looking at his mugshots just to see his face, and I didn't like the way I felt. So I tried to ignore it. And the more I tried to ignore it, the worse it got. And at the same time, my dad is going through chemo and radiation. He's going through radiation every single day. And while he's in radiation, they find a small tumor in his brain. Of course, he didn't tell me right away. He finally told me one day, he said, "Hey, they found a small tumor." And I'm like, "Okay, so what does that mean?" He said, "That means I continue my chemo and my radiation until I'm finished." I said, "Okay." The day I come back from having the flu, which is January 2nd, I had about 10 letters for me. Because at the time, he didn't know what was going on. And when I say he, I mean Hunter, didn't know what was going on and he was worried. He asked some people why I wasn't at work and they told him, she has the flu, she's going to be out for a week. So he wrote me a letter every single day while I was gone, begging me to text him, to get a burner app to text him, to text his mom, so I can see that he's a genuine guy. And I fell for it. Not even gonna lie. I'm being 100% transparent. I fell for it. I downloaded a texting app with a different area code, completely different area code, and started texting him. Now, we thought we were being careful because I wasn't using my name in any of the messages, and neither was he. We made it out to be like I was a single mom of 2 girls who lived in Owensboro, and my name was Courtney. So we thought we was being slick, and you know what always happens when you think you're being slick. You end up getting caught up. So also at the end of January, he gets fired from the Class D program and has to go to the regular pods. I'm in my position at the tower, and I see that we have a move list, and I see that his name's on it. So I did my round in the Class D pod, and I pulled him to the side, and I'm like, "Hey, just to let you know, go ahead and pack up all your stuff. They're getting ready to move you to another pod." And that didn't go so well. They went to go try to move him. He refused, saying that he wasn't going. They sent a supervisor back there, and the supervisor they sent back there, he was 62 years old, and he looked like Mr. Clean, and he was buff. So he goes in there, and he looks at him, and he's like, "You have to move. There's no question about it." And he was like, "I'm not going," and then he took him up front and talked to him for a little bit. He was up there for about an hour, so I called from my position, and I was like, "Hey, what's going on? Is everything okay? Is he coming back soon? We got to do this and do that." And my supervisor was like, "Yeah, we're just talking and everything, so he'll be back there in a few minutes." And I said, "All right." He starts walking back towards the back, and I'm like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I just talked to, your supervisor. Everything's okay. I'm being moved to this pod because I can't go up to another pod because I have people that want me in there because I owe them money from playing cards." Now this guy, all he did all day long was play cards. All day long. And he would get himself into trouble with other people. And he would claim that he'd get in a fight over it. But I never found that to be true. It's starting to come out that he is a great liar. And he is very manipulative, which we should have known that. From me going from, no, I'm not doing anything, to, okay, I'll text him and I'm sitting there dreaming about him and everything. So he gets moved up, and then I have my 2 days off, and then he gets moved up to a higher pod of the upstairs. So I go in there one day and I'm like, hey, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, did you have a good couple days off? And I'm like, yeah, I did, It was relaxing, I got some sleep. Because at the time, I was with my fiance, and he thought that I only needed to get 4 hours of sleep, even if I worked a 12-hour shift or a 16-hour shift. I'd be asleep for 4 hours, he'd wake me up, and he'd make me get up with the kids. I missed my boys, I was working all the time, but I also needed my sleep. And also, while I'm sitting here working all these hours, I'm getting nasty text messages from my fiance about the kids, about how they're not listening to him, and how they're going to bed early. And I told him, I said, hey, you need to calm down. I'm providing for us. I'm making sure that we all have what we need. And I'm working my butt off to do that because you're not working right now because of the crazy schedule at the facility. Things calmed down for a little bit. And there's stairs that lead up to the upper pod. And there is a blind spot on those stairs. And there's no cameras on the stairs at all. So one day, he asked me to go down and get a tablet that was charged because we only had so many, and we kept them in a case by the tower. So I did that, and as we're going down the stairwell, he stops me and hugs me and gives me a kiss on the cheek. Now, I am smitten at this point because I'm going through a toxic relationship at home. My dad's got cancer, and we don't know how everything's going to turn out. And I really appreciated the fact that someone cared for me and wanted to love me for me. And that was my first mistake. Everyone's saying, hey, you should have turned in those letters instead of throwing them away. And yes, I should have. I agree with you. But at the same time, you never know how you're going to act once you're in that situation until you get into it. I'm not making excuses. I'm not proud of what I did. I don't like the fact that I went from this to a felon. I was doing good. My dad was proud of me for the first time in a long time. He said I had a respectable career and I wanted to make something out of it, and I did for about 5 months. So things start getting more serious. We're texting all day, every day when I'm not at work. He's texting me, I love you, good morning, beautiful, I hope your day goes okay at the factory. And I was like, hey, they're making me work a bunch more overtime, how it is with this place. And he was like, yeah, I understand. So I think I'm golden until February rolls around. And that's when shit hits the fan. So go ahead and follow me for part 3. I will either get that posted later on tonight or tomorrow. I'm trying to post these in a timely manner, but at the same time, I am home alone with 2 toddlers all day, 3-year-old and 2-year-old, so you can imagine it's hard for me to get away to record. But thank you guys for all your comments and likes and follows, and I really appreciate y'all. Alright y'all, part 3 on how I went from CO to felon. February rolls around, and I'm in a full-blown relationship with this guy. We're writing letters back and forth to each other every day. We're texting every day. And every day during my shifts, he's always coming out to go get a charged tablet in exchange for a dead tablet. We'd go into the stairwell. He'd ask me how my dad was doing and how everything was at home. I'd tell him everything, tell him the struggles I was going through. And then he'd hug me and we'd kiss. And then he'd go back into the pod. And at this time, it wasn't unusual for him to stick letters in my pocket because that's how we were exchanging them. So I read it in the bathroom one day, and he's telling me about all the struggles he's going through in the pod, where he's in debt to people because he keeps playing these card games and he keeps losing, and everyone's getting aggravated that he's not paying them back. And I've heard rumblings about this because where I worked, I could turn the speakers on in the cell and I could listen to hear what they were saying. And everyone was getting aggravated, everyone was talking about getting him. So every night during lockdown, his cell would stay open because he had epilepsy and he would have seizures. So one night I went in there to do cleaning cards when I was working on my 3 a.m. shift. We'd get out the cleaning cards, put them in the pod so that the pod trustees could clean and everything. And then the first shift would put them back. Well, In his pod, there was a closet door that was really hard to open. He would always stay awake until he knew that I was coming in, and he'd come and help me open the door. And there's no cameras because it was towards the bathrooms of the pods. So he comes in there with me. He's sitting there talking to me, telling me he loves me, telling me that he wants a future with me. And of course, I'm buying into it because I'm in a relationship with him. And I truly thought I loved him. So we would hug, we would kiss. You know, he'd go back to his cell. I finished what I was doing. One day, I listened in on the speaker, and I hear him talking about me. And I'm sitting there going, oh crap. Because he's young, I'm not gonna lie. He's 23 now. At the time, he was 22. And there's a 10-year difference between us. So, I heard him talking, oh, my girl, and my girl this, and my girl that. And eventually, people knew who he was talking about. And I told him, I said, man, you gotta cut that out because someone's gonna find out and I'm gonna get in trouble. Oh, no one's gonna get you in trouble, I promise. I know all these people in here. Alright, dude. So, I had my 2 days off and I came back and he had a letter written for me. We'd go to the stairwell, do our thing, I'd go to the bathroom and I'd read the letter. Well, in this letter, he's telling me, hey, I'm in trouble. This is getting serious. Like, they're threatening me. And as a woman in a relationship, I feel like I have to protect my man. So
I can already tell how this is going. I feel like the inmate only likes her because he wants certain protection. I feel like he's just using her for protection because all these dudes want their money. But what do you guys think so far? Let me know in the comment section. This story is already turned out to be, I feel like I'm already knowing where this is about to go. I just feel like he ended up telling on her, but we're about to see.
He starts telling me to go to this mailbox and pick up this pack of ink pens and to bring them in and that they were going to tattoo with it and he was going to sell the pens and that's how he was going to bring the money in that he owed everybody. I told him no and I didn't talk to him for a couple days. I didn't text him. I didn't write him. When I went in for my rounds, I would ignore him. And he went and banged on the window one day and was pointing towards the speaker, so I turned the speaker on. And he started talking to me, I'm sorry, I don't want to ask you to do this, but I feel like it's the only way that I can be safe. So I told him, I said, well, let me think about it and I'll tell you my decision later. Well, one of my supervisors was in the tower with me one night when I was doing my round. I get done, I come back to the tower and he's like, hey, what did he want? He's always wanting to talk to you whenever you go in there. And I'm like, man, he's just talking to me about stuff that he's got going on, stuff that's going on in the pod. There's nothing, I promise. So every time that I go on my rounds, I know about these speakers. So anytime I would talk to him, I would make sure he was out of earshot of the speaker in case someone was listening. Then it came, he said, I'm getting a tattoo. I said, okay. He said, it's going to be your name. And I'm like, hold on a second. That's serious, and if someone sees it, they're gonna know it's me. He was like, no one's gonna see it, I promise, I'll make sure they don't. So I go in and do my rounds one evening, and he comes up to me and he says, what do you think? And on his ring finger was my name and a heart. I said, man, I don't know why you did that, just make sure no one sees it. Well, I love you, that's why I did it, and I want people to know. Alright, I was flattered because in my relationship that I was in, I wasn't being treated the way that I felt like I needed to be treated, and he was doing his own thing, talking to other women, and months later I would find out that while I was working, he brought someone in my house around my kids and in our bed. So at that point, all bets were off. I didn't care what he did, and I made sure that he wouldn't question what I did. So, February.
I'm not trying to bash her, but I just feel like she was looking for any excuse. Now, we don't know. Maybe he did eventually ended up cheating on her, but she was already cheating on him. And she didn't mention him being a cheater. She was just saying that he was a bad fiance because he just pretty much wasn't attentive to her needs. And sometimes I can get that because when you're living with somebody and you're with somebody for a long time, sometimes you can overlook little things going on in their lives or big things too. I guess he didn't handle it the way that she wanted him to handle it, so she just started moving her attentions elsewhere. But the whole time she was just trying to paint him as this villain in some way, so that way she can justify why she was making the decisions that she was making. But you didn't have to cheat on that man. You could have brought your issues to him, but you decided to bring all your issues and your problems and your trauma to an inmate who clearly just was using you for something. And we gonna figure out what that something is, trust me.
February 11th comes. I tell my fiance that I have to go into work early for a meeting. And against my better judgment, I went to this mailbox and I picked up this pack of ink pens. At this time, I feel like they were catching on to stuff because they were making me work up front a lot more often. And let me tell you, if you're in a relationship with someone who's locked up and you don't answer their phone calls or their texts, they get upset. So me and him are currently fighting because I can't immediately respond back to his text because I'm working up front and I can't have my phone on me. So the day that I pack up my ink pens and I put them in my pocket to bring them into them, they make me work up front. So I had to go to my car on my break and put the ink pens back in my car and let them sit until I know that I'm going to be working in the back. One night I'm working in Maine and I get a phone call from one of his family members. And they say, hey, I'm calling on behalf of Hunter because he's texting me that he's being threatened and he fears that he's going to be jumped in his pod tonight or tomorrow. All right, y'all. I will post part 4 tomorrow. Y'all have a good night. All right, y'all. Part 4 on how I went from CO to felon. So where I left off, I was working in Maine on one of my 3 a.m. shifts, and I had a family member call up there and say, hey, he's being threatened. We fear that he's going to be jumped in the pod either tonight or tomorrow after lockdown. I told her I would bring it to the shift supervisor, and then I hung up the phone. Once I brought it to the shift supervisor, they couldn't care less. They said whatever happens in the pod happens, and if anything gets physical and they can find the evidence of it, that they would put whoever did it in the hole. And of course, I'm upset about this because I'm in love with the dude, I care about him, and I know that he's being threatened because he's promised these people these ink pens and I haven't been able to deliver them. So I go home, I'm worried for the rest of the night and in the morning and until I can go to work the next day. I go to work the next day, I stick the pens in my pocket on the off chance that I can go in the back and I can give them to him. As luck would have it, I would go to my pre-shift meeting and they were like, hey, we need you to do a round in the back and then come up front. I told them, I said, okay, I'll make it quick and I'll get back up there and resume my duties. So I went back there and I did my round. I get to his pod, he sees me. He nods at me like, hey, do you have those? I shake my head yes. I do my round around the pod, and by the door, I throw the pens into the cell on the floor so he can pick them up. He tells me thank you, tells me he loves me, and I go up front, and I finish my shift. The next day, my regular supervisor was off, and anytime that happened, we would always get a pick of where we wanted to work, and I was tired of working up front, so I'm like, hey, can I go back in the tower? He was like, sure, go ahead. So I go up there, and of course, right before I'm scheduled to get off at 11 p.m., they call me and they say, hey, we need you to work until 3. Okay, cool, just let me stay back here. They said that was fine. So I go to do my cleaning carts around 2 a.m. that morning, and of course, he comes out and helps me with the door, but when we get into the door, that's when he starts trying to get really sexual, like trying to take my belt off, trying to undo my shirt. I push him off, and he will not quit. I'm like, dude, I told you, I'm not doing this. We're not crossing that line. Although I've already crossed a bunch of lines for you. He says, I'm sorry. I hope you're not mad at me. I love you. He goes back into his cell. I finish my shift. Everything seems to be okay. But then he starts texting me these really sexual messages, asking if I had with my fiance at the time, and if I would describe everything to him so that he could use it too, if you get my drift. I told him no. I was like, that's weird. I'm not doing it. No. So he gave up, and then the next day I went in for my shift. He comes up to me and he says, hey, I got another tattoo. Okay, what did you get? We go in the stairwell when he does his tablet. He gives me the letter and he shows me his hand on the top of it. It has my daughter's name on it. Now, mind you, he has never met my daughter, so I find this a little creepy. I give him his tablet. I'm like, hey, I gotta go. And he's trying to get me to talk to him over the speaker for the rest of shift, and I refuse because I'm really weirded out. Yes, I love this man. Yes, I care about him, but I felt like he took it a little too far, getting my daughter's name tattooed on him when he doesn't even know her. So he texts me, trying to be sexual again. I stop. I'm like, no, we're not doing this. Obviously, the text messages did become sexual soon after that. But he also always wanted weird stuff, like asking me if I had slept with my fiance and asking me to describe it and how big his was and if I loved it and if I screamed and everything. This is where I'm starting to figure out that this dude is a really weird dude. So follow me for another part. Should be out tomorrow. Alright y'all, part 5 on how I went from CO to felon. So the last 16-hour shift I worked, it was on a Tuesday. It was a 3 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift and I worked in booking. We were super busy that night, so I wasn't able to go out and take breaks as much as I would like and check my phone. I go out at 2 o'clock in the morning and I see that Hunter is blowing my phone absolutely all the way up. Freaking out on me, cussing me out because I haven't responded to any of his messages, accusing me of cheating on him, which he knew about the fiance I had at home. Asking me if I'm with another guy, and I'm telling him, and I'm like, hey, I'm in the factory, which, if you remember, we said that I'm working in a factory because we're trying to make sure that they don't know it's me that he's texting. And I'm like, I'm in this new position, they're making me work overtime, and I can't have my phone on me. And I thought that I had calmed him down because he texted me, okay, I love you, I'm sorry, I understand. I go in, 2 hours later, I'm able to come out on another break. I check my phone, and I had seen that he had texted my actual phone number. I am upset, sitting here thinking, he's got to be smarter than this. I don't know what he was thinking texting my actual phone number. I don't know why he would. So I text him on the texting app, and I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Are you trying to get me caught up? You know what you did. You know you're not supposed to do that. What were you thinking? Oh, I'm so sorry. You were ignoring me. I didn't know if you were with another man. I didn't know what was going on. I was worried about you. And I told him, I said, I'm done talking to you for the night. Go to sleep. I'll talk to you when I can. I finish out my shift. I go home. I have my 2 days off. I come back in February 23rd, which is a Friday. I get to my pre-shift meeting. One of my sergeants pulled me to the side, and he looks at me, hey, you need to rebuild your reputation up around here. They're talking about you, and I don't know what's going to happen. I tell him, thank you for the heads up. And almost immediately, the captain comes out and points at me, hey, I need you to come into my office. I go into the office with her. She shuts the door. It's her and another captain. And these are the same 2 people that pulled me into the office when I became under investigation the first time. They look at me and tell me, hey, we got a disturbing phone call today that we need to investigate. Are you pregnant? I'm flabbergasted sitting here at this point. I don't know what I'm going to say, and I just blurt out, I'll pee on a stick for you right now to prove I'm not pregnant. You can ask the nurse in medical. I took a pregnancy test not that long ago because I thought I was pregnant with my fiance. They pull out a stack of papers this thick because if you remember, me and him are texting as much as we can on my days off, when I'm not at work, when I'm taking breaks at work. And they circle 3 text messages that he sent to my actual phone number. And they said, how did he get your number? I told him, I don't know. I'm sitting here trying to talk my way out of it. Don't know how he got my number. Don't know why he's texting my number. And they pull up a picture of me and him walking in the pod. And they're like, what were y'all talking about? Why are y'all walking so close? You could be holding hands in this picture. I quickly point out that you can see all 4 of our hands. Mine are by my side. He's got one hand by his side, and he's got one hand up because he talks with his hands. Well, why are y'all walking so close? Because he's talking to me about things in the pod that he didn't want other people to know that he was talking to me about. When in reality, he's trying to convince me the whole time I'm doing this round to bring in another pack of ink pens for them so he can sell them off to pay more of his debt. Hunter was always getting in debt with people, whether it be him borrowing commissary, losing at card games, or using other people's devices to text me when he was out of money. So they're sitting there, they're asking me, well, what do you have to say for yourself? At this point, I hang my head down and I just start crying because I know I'm caught, I'm scared, and I don't know what's going to happen.
Hell no. I'm lying till the wheels fall off if I'm in this situation. What? You gonna have to see me put lips on somebody. You gonna have to see me in the act. Batman couldn't get this information out of me.
Thinking of my kids, I'm thinking of my fiance. And they were like, well, with this pregnancy claim that's against you, we might have to get detectives involved. I start crying even more because that scares the absolute crap out of me. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to get in trouble. So they asked me again if I'm pregnant, and I tell them, no, I will pee on a stick for you right now. Like, I will literally squat down in front of you and pee on a stick. Well, we're not asking you to do that and everything. And they said, well, do you have anything else to say for yourself? And I was like, I was manipulated. I fell for it. I don't know why I fell for it. Head down, and I'm crying, like snot's coming out of my nose. I'm crying so hard. They asked me if I have anything. That's all they kept asking was, do you have anything else to say for yourself? Do you have anything else to say for yourself? And I just looked at them and I said, well, I'll resign my position. And they looked at me, oh no, you're terminated, turn in your belt. I said, that's fair. I took my belt off. I walked out of the facility. I got to my car and I called my fiance. I let him know, hey, you want to go back to work? This is your opportunity. I just got fired. I'm coming home. And he asked me what happened. I just told him I talked to him about it when I see him in 15 minutes. I get home and he's like, well, what happened? And I'm telling him, they had some concerns and they couldn't let it go, so they terminated me. Because at this point, I'm not telling him what's going on. He doesn't know anything that's going on. I'm keeping everything in secret. Later that evening, I get 3 text messages on my phone asking if I'm okay, asking me to please talk to him, and I don't respond back because I'm scared. I text his mom and I let her know, hey, I've been terminated, I can't talk to him, is he okay? She was like, I don't know, I haven't heard from him, they disabled his chirp device, I don't know if he's in the hole, I don't know what's going on. So I text her all weekend, hey, have you heard from him? Hey, have you heard from him? Because I'm freaking out. I don't know if he's getting hurt, I don't know what's going on.
That girl need to be worried about her family, and she over here worrying about an inmate getting hurt. Girl, oh, she was in deep and then got caught. I want to know how was they even asking if she was pregnant or not. I feel like somebody told.
That Tuesday, she calls me, and it's weird because she never calls me. She only texts me. Hey, he's being moved to another facility. I'll let you know when he gets booked in, and I'll have him call you. So I'm impatiently waiting for this phone call. I'm pacing around the house, trying to clean up the house, trying to do anything I can to occupy my mind. 2 hours later, she calls me. Hey, he's been booked in. Hey, he's at this facility. He's getting ready to call you from this number. Answer the phone. 5 minutes later, the number rings through on my phone and he calls me. And I immediately just start screaming on the phone. Oh my God, baby, are you okay? What happened? And he was like, why didn't you text me back? I've been worried about you all weekend. He's like, I didn't know what happened to you. People told me you got fired and I wasn't sure if you were in any trouble. And I'm just like, I'm okay. Yes, I've been fired. I'll move past it. So where he's in this new facility, I'm able to video visit him when I want. I'm able to text him, but I'm doing all of this in secret. So I'm doing it when my fiance's at work, or I'm doing it when he's asleep, and I'm keeping everything under wraps. So we're sitting there, everything's going okay, he's able to say my name, and it's weird to hear him say my name because I could never hear that when he was at the other facility. We're in this relationship, everything's going okay, until I'm up early one morning in March, and I see the indictment list posted in the town's newspaper. And I scroll down, halfway down the list, and there's Hunter's name, my name, another inmate's name, and an inmate's girlfriend's name. Now, I didn't know the inmate's girlfriend. I knew of the other inmate because he was in the same pod as Hunter. And I'm freaking out. I'm calling his mom crying, and she's saying, hey, you need to call and get a lawyer, call and get a lawyer. I'm texting him on the texting app, like, you need to call me ASAP, and he can't call me until 8 a.m. because that's when the phones turn on there. And he's freaking out, asking me what's going on, and I'm like, we got trouble, we got big trouble. And he said, what kind of trouble? I said, indictment trouble. And he was like, well, what are the charges? You need to tell me right now. So I tell him what his charges are, and he's like, well, what are your charges? On the indictment, my charges are promoting contraband first, promoting contraband second, and 3rd degree grape. Because
She's cooked. 3rd degree? Hold on, what? Whoa, that one caught me off guard. I'm sorry. I thought she was just about to say contraband. Third degree what?
Officer, and he was an inmate. And he doesn't know what to say at this point except for, I'm sorry. And obviously at that point, I'm sorry wasn't going to cut it because I'm looking at some major stuff over all of this. Alright, y'all, I'm going to post part 6 later on today, so watch out for my page. Okay, y'all, part 6 on how I went from CO to felon. So where I left off, I had been indicted and found out through my town's newspaper that I had 3 other people on the case with me. I told Hunter, talked to him about it, told his mom. His mom told me to get a lawyer. So I called the sheriff's office at 9 o'clock that morning, and I'm like, hey, I just found out I've been indicted. Can I come pick up my paperwork instead of y'all serving it at my house? They told me to come in an hour and a half and that it would be ready and I could pick it up. So I tell my fiance I have to go run some errands, which at the time I did have to run errands on top of going there because I was still out looking for a job. And I get there, I'm on the phone with Hunter the entire time. He's listening as I talk to the officers. I get my paperwork, I go out to the car, and I am instantly relieved because I look at my paperwork and I had only been served a summons instead of a warrant. So a summons is you just have a court date and you have to appear in court. While everyone else on my case got warrants and a $50,000 cash bond. I'm driving back to my house and I'm sitting there, how am I going to hide this paperwork? I don't know what I'm going to do. So I go to my neighbor's house when I get back and I'm like, hey, can I talk to you for a second outside? She comes outside and I tell her the situation I'm in and I show her my paperwork and I beg her, hey, can you please keep this in your house and hide it so that your fiance doesn't find out and he doesn't tell mine? So she shows me where she's going to hide it and she says, anytime you need it, you can come get it. Here's where it is. And I'm like, oh, thank you. I really appreciate this. You know, just keep this to yourself. And then a couple days later, my dad calls me. He tells me he's got the results back from his PET scan and the news isn't good. The cancer not only wasn't in his brain, it had also spread to his spine and his pancreas, and he was refusing any further treatment. I sit there and I talk to him. I tell him everything's going to be okay. I know he's scared. I'm scared too. So I talk to him for a little bit and I head back to the house. I have Hunter call me because I'm freaking out. I'm losing my dad. I never thought I'd lose my dad this soon. He calms me down. I get back to the house to tell my fiance what's going on. He asked me if I need anything and I said, can I just go lay down for a little bit? And he said, yeah. I go lay down. I cry. Hunter calls me again, checks on me, makes sure I'm okay. That weekend, I'm sleeping in the bed and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm getting woken up by my fiance, asking me about something he's seen on my phone. I look at it, I recognize it's from the texting app, and I'm sitting here like, holy crap. Because at this point in time, Hunter had been transferred from the facility that he was in back to the facility I worked in after they served him his indictment. He's asking me about why this person on this texting app is calling me his wife, why he's saying that he loves me and everything, and he's begging me to explain myself. And I made a bad decision. I looked at him, I said, I just want to go back to sleep. He looks at me like, are you kidding me? How can you just go back to sleep? I'm torn apart by this. We need to talk about it. So I sit up with him and I'm like, what do you want to know? Well, who is it? I told him. I was like, it's Hunter. He is in the facility that I worked at. I've been seeing him since January. And my fiance is so upset. He starts crying. He's really upset and mad, and I get that. He just found out his fiance is cheating on him with an inmate. I would be upset too. So go back to sleep for a while. Wake up. He's still mad at me. He goes off and goes out of the house for a little bit to calm down. And then he comes back and he said, hey, I've called the facility you used to work at to let them know that this guy is texting my wife, and I talked to one of your old supervisors. And I'm sitting here, why would you do that? I don't work there anymore. I don't understand why you called them. And he told me, he said, well, someone is texting my fiance and they're not supposed to be, and they needed to know. Unbeknownst to me as well, when he had my phone, he took down the phone number of Hunter and started texting him, cussing him out, telling him that he knows and everything, and that he's called the facility I worked at, and that they know, and that he should be getting in trouble. anytime now. Now, mind you, yes, he knows about Hunter at this point, but he still doesn't know about the indictment. And he doesn't know about the indictment for another couple weeks until we start going to couples counseling. We're in couples counseling one day. I asked to speak to the therapist by myself for a little bit, talked to her about my dad refusing treatment and how I was feeling about that. Then I brought up the indictment to her. She asked me if he knew. I told her no. She looks at me and she says, "You realize you have to tell him, right?" I told her I didn't want to at that point because I was scared. She said, "I'm going to be here with you. I'm going to help you." So she calls my fiance into the room, sits him down, and I'm like, "I need to tell you something." He's looking at me like, "How could you have anything else to tell me?" I told him about the indictment. I told him about the situation. He's sitting there flabbergasted. He is upset. He's crying. "How could I do this to us? How could I do this to our family?" I told him I had no good explanation for it. Tried to tell him that it was because of the way he treated me and everything while I was working there. He wasn't hearing it. We end the therapy session. We get back to our car, and
I knew he did not cheat. She had the opportunity to say it right there. She said she had no damn reason other than neglect. I know we're supposed to be listening, not judge, but it's early, and I got my coffee in, and it's kind of hard. This is getting to me. Because while y'all had couple therapy, MessyFam, is it just me? If you found out news like this, are you going to couples counseling? You know what, he probably did the right thing, but we gonna see.
is interrogating me. "Did you do it? Did you do this? Did you do that?" And at the time when I told him, he didn't believe me that I didn't have sexual relations with Hunter. He kept looking at me and calling me an R word. Every time he would call me an R word, I would scream at the top of my lungs, I didn't do it. And up until a couple of months ago, my fiance really believed that I had sexual relations with this man and would not take any other explanation for it. The next Friday, Hunter has his first court appearance for our new case. Of course, I'm sitting in the courtroom in support of him. Now, my fiance doesn't know that I went to the courthouse in support of him. I told him I was going to therapy, but I canceled my therapy appointment a couple days before. As I'm leaving the courthouse to go back home, I'm trying to text Hunter's mom to let her know, hey, he's at his first court appearance. He should be back at the facility now, and he should text you anytime now. But instead of texting his mom, I send the text message to my fiance. Alright, y'all. Also in the Q&A video, I forgot to mention why Hunter was locked up in the first place. He originally was serving a 6.5-year sentence for a police chase. He stole a friend's Jeep, and when police tried to stop him, he took them on a police chase through 3 counties and into a different state. And during that police chase, he also crashed into a state trooper's car and knocked it over a hill. Alright, thank you for your support and continued support. I appreciate it. Keep looking on my page for part 7. It's where it gets really good. Okay, y'all, part 7 on how I went from CO to felon. So when I left off in the last part, I tried to text Hunter's mom to let her know about the court appearance and that he would be back at the jail and he would be texting her soon. And I ended up texting my fiance instead. So he immediately calls me and is questioning me, asking me what I'm talking about, and I'm playing dumb because obviously I realized I texted the wrong person. And I was like, oh, well, in therapy, my therapist had a contact at the courthouse, and she told me that the court appearance was over and that they would be back soon, so I was texting Hunter's mom. And he was like, well, at least you went to therapy. I'm proud of you for that. We continued the phone conversation, and I went home. So I was talking to Hunter on the app, and he tells me he gets his discovery pack in because his case is moving a lot quicker than mine because he's locked up and they want to get him done and out. So when he tells me he gets this discovery pack, he says there's going to be an interrogation CD in it, and I don't need you to listen to it when you get yours. When you get it, break it. I immediately question him. Why should I break this CD? Then he tells me because on the CD is my interrogation of the day you got fired, and they coerced me, and I told them that we had sex. And I'm just sitting there, mouth open, freaking out. Why would you do that? You know we didn't do anything, and you're the reason why I'm being charged with this. So I hang up the phone. I don't talk to him for a couple days. I'm not responding to his messages. He's trying to video visit me. He's trying to call me. He's trying to text me. And I just simply tell him, leave me alone. I need to process this. I don't know how to move forward. So after about the 1,000th apology I get from him, I answer a phone call. He says, hey, I need to talk to you about something. I found out who snitched on us. Because one of my coworkers from the facility I was at told me that it was another inmate in the pod. The other inmate that was on my case. So I took it as that. Well, he reads me this statement of the phone call that the facility received. Lo and behold, it was the baby mama. She called the jail. She's the one who snitched on me. So after she called the jail, that's when they started going through the chirp messages and started printing them out and finding out everything. Finding out that the other inmate that's on the case is because he was talking about it over a video visit with his girlfriend, telling his girlfriend how to package everything and that I would come pick it up from his grandmother's mailbox. So I'm sitting here listening to him tell me this, and mind you, at this time I had not spoken to the baby mama because of everything that he had told me about their relationship and her. I had a warped vision of her in my head, and I'm like, I don't want the drama, I don't want to deal with this. And at this point, she's begging him to let her talk to me because obviously he wants to have me around their child when he gets out, and so she just wants to know who's going to be around her. So he's reading me the statement, and it says, hi, I'm JC, I'm Hunter's baby mama. I believe he's gotten someone in your facility pregnant. Back in February, they were on a phone call together, and he told her he was going to be a daddy again. He didn't say stepdaddy, he said daddy. So that led her to believe he got someone pregnant in the facility, and she thought that it was a commissary worker. Which now makes a lot of sense in my head as I'm listening to this about why they asked me if I was pregnant when they pulled me into the captain's office. So he finishes reading me the statement, and he was like, you can't reach out to her and you can't tell her your case is still going on. It'll jeopardize everything, so I don't. And at this point, I don't want to. So he finishes reading the statement, and he tells me some of the other things that are in the discovery pack. So I ask him, I'm like, why did you tell them this? And I said it. I promise I'm not going to let you go down for this. You're my wife. We're going to get married when I get out. And I'm like, okay, so what are you going to do to fix it? Because I'm not taking this charge because we didn't do anything. He says, well, I'm going to write a letter to our lawyers and the prosecutor and the judge explaining that nothing happened and that they coerced me. And he did. He wrote letters to everybody and sent them out. He sent both lawyers' letters to his lawyer because at the time I hadn't even been arraigned and I didn't even know who my lawyer was going to be. After I get off the phone with Hunter, I text Hunter's mom and I let her know what I just found out. She texts me back, don't reach out to her, don't do anything. Her family is nothing but drama. I should know. I've been involved in the family for a while. After I talk to Hunter's mom, I'm sitting there thinking about everything, thinking of all the worst outcomes that could possibly come. And it's starting to make sense to me that he is the one who said this because while I worked at the facility, I found out that he is the one who snitched on his mom and dad for having a rug lab underneath his bedroom in the basement. So I'm trying to occupy my mind, and so I'm scrolling on the Blue app. I notice I have a message request coming in. I click on it and I read it. Hi, I was locked up with Hunter and I wanted to let you know of a few things. I was video visiting my girlfriend one night and Hunter saw, and after I went to bed, Hunter got my PIN code and started calling and texting my girlfriend, trying to video visit with her, trying to tell her he's 30 years old and that he's single and that he wants a relationship with her when he gets out. And that he used up all of this guy's phone time to try to convince his girlfriend to leave him and get with Hunter to be in a relationship. Also, I just wanted to let you know there's a female inmate that gives notes to him, and she comes up to the door every night and flashes her yayas at him. So I text Hunter that he needs to call me immediately. As soon as he calls me, I'm screaming at him at everything that I know, and I'm telling him about it. He admits to it. He said, "You did it?" He said, "Because she put phone time and chirp time on my phone when you couldn't, and I needed a way to talk to you." I tell him this makes no sense and that he's just trying to justify being caught. And apparently that's a common thing of his, because anytime JC would find that he cheated on her, he would always try to justify it as well. In the midst of all this, things with my fiance are getting really bad. We're getting in really bad fights. It comes to the day that I'm supposed to go to court for my arraignment. We get in a fight that morning, and my car was in his name that I was driving. So he leaves, takes off in the car, and deflates a tire in the other car that we have, so I can't go. So I'm freaking out. I don't want to get a warrant for not showing up to court. So I call the courthouse and I tell them, "Hey, this is the situation I'm going in. I'm supposed to be in there for arraignment today. Can you get a note to the judge to let them know what's going on?" So they do. My arraignment gets pushed back a couple more weeks. Later that day, I get a phone call from my uncle, and he tells me that he hasn't talked to my dad for a couple of days and that he's worried, and if I can go to his house and check on him. So I go, Hunter calls me, and he talks to me the whole time I'm going over there, hoping that my dad's okay, and I'm thinking worst case scenario. I'm thinking he's passed away and no one's found him yet. I get to his house, and he wasn't there. I wait around. Finally, my dad replies back to my messages and tells me that he's in the hospital. I get to the hospital. He's mad that I'm there because he told them not to let anyone know that he was there and he didn't want any visitors. Come to find out, he contracted C. diff on top of everything else that he was dealing with. He's in the hospital for a couple more days. I go the day that he's supposed to be released, and they tell me that my dad's being released on hospice care. Y'all been waiting for it, so here's part 8 on how I went from CO to felon. My dad gets out of the hospital. There's a hospice nurse that comes to his house every day, make sure he takes his meds, make sure he doesn't need a bath or anything, clean up his house a little bit for him. He keeps this up for about a week before he realizes he can't take care of himself. So he's going into a nursing facility, and this will be the facility that he's in until the day he passes away, unfortunately. He's on so much pain meds that he doesn't know who I am when I go visit him. He's out of his mind, thinking that people are out to unalive him. He's throwing himself in the floor. He's threatening to unalive himself. They send him to a psych ward for evaluation, say that he doesn't need to be held. He goes back to the nursing facility. I go by McDonald's to get him his favorite burger and to get him a Coke. I take it to him. He's refusing to eat anything I bring him, anything other family members bring him, anything that the nursing home gives him. He's refusing it all. And he's starting to lose a bunch of weight. One day, I go up there and I meet with my aunts and my uncles, and I pull them outside and let them know that I have a situation going. I tell them first and foremost that my dad is not to know any of the situation that I'm about to tell them. So I go into the story. I tell them what my charges are. I had my indictment paperwork with me, so I showed it to my uncle. They're all in support of me, saying that they don't believe that I did what they're saying that I did. They tell me if there's anything that I need them to do to let them know, and that they would support me in any way that they could. A couple weeks after that, I have to go to my first court appearance. My fiance goes with me and sits with me. I wait for all the inmates to get done with what they're doing, and then they start calling everybody else. I go up to the podium. The judge asks if I have a lawyer. I tell him I do not, and that I need one appointed to me because I am currently unemployed. A public defender steps up, waives the formal reading of the indictment, checks with me to make sure that all the paperwork is correct, and then they tell me and the judge, we can't represent her. It's a conflict of interest. There's 4 people on her case. She's got to have a conflict lawyer come out and be her attorney. I won't find out who my attorney is until the next court date. Everything is calming down with me and my fiance at this point. I knew that he had been talking to someone for a while, and he leaves on the weekends to go have dates with her and spends the night with her. I'm still talking to Hunter, so when he's gone, I'm using it as an opportunity to talk to him as much as I can and whenever I can. Video visits, calls, text messages. My dad's continuing to get worse. The nursing home calls me anytime he falls, anytime he has an incident. But when they don't call me is when the hospice nurse gives me a call and says, hey, I need to let you know of an incident that happened. A nurse was changing your father, and she turns him over a little too hard, and she smacks his head on the metal part of his hospital bed, and then blames it on him because he's flailing around because he's uncomfortable, because he's raw at this point because he's been wearing adult diapers for over a month because he can't control his bowels because of the C. diff on top of the cancer. I call the nursing home and I absolutely flip my stuff. The nurse tech gets fired. So fast forward to a couple weeks later, I'm put in the hospital myself because I had a really bad kidney infection and I went into diabetic ketoacidosis. I'm on video visit with Hunter one day when my fiance comes in. He's bringing me food, and Hunter absolutely loses his stuff. He's yelling, he's cussing, and I hang up the video visit, tell him I'll talk to him later when he calms down. And on the last day I'm in the hospital, the hospice nurse calls me and tells me that my dad has 12 hours left. I tell her I'll see what I can do. I talk to my nurses, they talk to the doctor says I can go home. But it's taking a while to get me out of there, and they give me pain medicine right before I get discharged. So I go home, it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm planning to get up really early in the morning to go see my dad. I wake up to a phone call at 5:30 saying that my father has passed away, exactly 12 hours from when they called me the first time. The funeral home sets it up to where I can say goodbye to him before he's cremated, because that was his wish. He didn't want to have a funeral, he just wanted to be cremated. Sorry y'all, this is really hard for me to talk about this. A week later, me and my fiance get in a really, almost physical, but a really explosive fight. He's throwing a vape through the TV, he's throwing my mom's ashes all over the bedroom. I inherited my dad's truck, he took the truck key and broke it in half. I couldn't find the other part of the key. The police show up, they make him leave. All while I'm having this fight with him, Hunter's on the phone and he hears this man threaten to unalive me. And then Hunter starts threatening him himself. He leaves. I go to file an EPO, but they don't serve him the EPO because they can't find him and they don't know where he's at. I don't even know where he's at this point. I get the truck key fixed. I'm getting mentally prepared for my next court.
As y'all can see, I am not a fan of Hunter in this relationship. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just not a fan of it. Like, girl, what did you do? Snap out of it. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking snap out of it. Like, what are you talking about? Talking about he's on the phone arguing with your fiance. What is he gonna do? If your fiance put you in a full Nelson right now while you on the phone.
Court date that is in 5 days. And Hunter calls me one day and tells me that he just had a meeting with the prosecutor and my lawyer and his lawyer. Y'all, he knew who my lawyer was before I even met her at the next court appearance. He tells me her name, he tells me what she looks like, and then I'm going to meet her when I go to court again. Show up to the courthouse for my court hearing. She comes up to me, hi, I'm your attorney, I'm from out of county. Let's talk and I'm going to ask you some questions. So I follow her outside. She says, first and foremost, are you still in contact with Hunter? And is it romantic? I tell her, yes, I am. And she says, well, there's nothing that we can do to stop you from talking to him because there's not a no contact order put in place. So as long as y'all are still in this relationship, y'all can still talk to each other. I tell her that there's a letter that his lawyer has for her and that she needs to get it from him. We go through the appearance. She puts in the motions for discovery and they put it off for another month. So they drop the EPO in June because they can't find him and they can't serve him. Me and him get back in contact with each other. He comes over one day when his new girlfriend's at work, cheats on her with me, comes back the next day, same thing happens. I feel bad about this because I've talked to this lady over the phone. She's really sweet and she doesn't deserve it. So one day I decide I'm going to tell Hunter and I'm going to tell her. I send her screenshots. I tell Hunter over the phone. We break up and she calls me and says, hey, I let your fiance know that I know he's on his way to your house now. He's super upset. So he comes back to stay with me. I'm also in the process of getting evicted from my apartment, so I have to start packing the apartment up. I get evicted in July. I go stay with some of my friends. I don't tell them that I'm still talking to Hunter, but all the meanwhile I'm texting him, I'm calling him. And then one day, he comes up with this bright idea and tries to convince me to sell my body. Yes, sell my body so that I can put money on his chirp and his phone so that he can be in contact with me. I tell him that's not going to happen. I'm not doing that. That's not right. He's pressuring me to do this, and he's even sending me prices at this point. It was $100 for a date, $500 for overnight. And I'm sitting here confused. Why is this man telling me I need to sell myself? Later that same day, I get a phone call from my lawyer saying that she's got the first offer from the prosecuting office. She gives me this offer and I cannot believe it. I refuse to take it. They are trying to get me 13 years. 5 on the promoting contraband, 5 to 10 on the third degree R, and a year for the misdemeanor contraband. I'm not taking the third degree charge because I did not do it. I'll take the contraband charge. I told her that straight up, I'll take the contraband charge. So she comes back and says, "Oh, let me talk to the prosecuting office and we'll go from there." A week later, I get a phone call from my lawyer and she wants to set up an appointment for me to come into her office so that we can go all this discovery together, including the interrogation CD. Sorry y'all that it's taken me so long to post part 9. Life got in the way yesterday. I had a few projects I had to do. Also keep a lookout for those. But here's part 9 on how I went from CO to Felon. I've looked around my house and I can't find the interrogation CD. If I find it and I can play some of it for you, I will. But I'm in my lawyer's office and I'm listening to the CD, and it starts out with Hunter telling them that he's not going to say anything because he doesn't want to get me in trouble. And they keep pressuring him and asking about the relationship that was between us. And that's when he finally breaks and says, "Fine, I'll tell y'all. We've had relations every day since she's met me." Now, my jaw drops when I hear this, because if you remember, he told me not to listen to the CD when I told him it was going to be in my discovery because he didn't want me to hear it. And he doesn't have his copy because he broke it once he realized I listened to my part of the CD. And at this time, his charges he were facing for this case were the promoting contraband 1, which is a Class D felony, and they were trying to hit him with a PFO, so persistent felony offender, carries an automatic 10-year sentence in the state that I live in. And so obviously he's going to try to talk his way out of it and make it seem like he's the victim because he doesn't want to get this automatic 10 years. So I'm hearing his statements and I'm sitting here thinking, I'm going to beat this charge on my own, because at this point, this whole time, he's telling me that I need his help because he's been in the court system and I have not, because I didn't have a criminal record at this point. He takes his plea deal at the end of August, and they tell him if he pleads guilty to the promoting contraband 1, that they would drop the PFO, and that's what he did. And I go to court not long after that. My lawyer shows me an email from the prosecutor where he says that even when he takes his guilty plea, he's still maintaining that we had relations the entire time that he was at this jail. And that's why the prosecutor's going after me so hard for this third degree charge. I look at my lawyer and I say, we're going to do this on our own. I don't need his help anymore. I need you to go to these 3 facilities and pull the records and the text messages and the video chats so you can see how bad he flip-flops. Because we're fighting all the time at this point. One day he loves me, one day I'm the worst person in the world, and I'm doing everything to be against him, and I'm conspiring against the lawyers to get him more time just so he doesn't get to be out with the free world. So I tell her to do this and to go through and to circle all the times that he flip-flops in these messages and video chats. And she does. A couple weeks later, she comes back to me and she says, "I have another offer from the prosecutor and you're going to like this one." The prosecutor is willing to drop the third degree charge for a misconduct charge, which is a misdemeanor, and they're offering me 5 years probation. I immediately tell her to set up a court date for the next month in October, and I would come in and I would definitely take this plea deal. Now, Hunter doesn't know that I'm doing this because I'm still telling him that I'm going to use his help and basically talking to him at this point just so I can get some dirt on him for JC in case she ever needs to take him to court to protect her child against him. He gets transferred out of the facility that I used to work in, and then he gets transferred into the SAT program so that he can try to get time knocked off his sentence. I don't talk to him for a couple weeks before he gets transferred. And the day he gets transferred, he calls me and asks me to tell his mom how to put money on his phone so that he can get a hold of her. I tell him straight up he can find someone else to do it, that I'm not doing anything else for him, and that I was done with him. And this is in September. Now, the day that he calls me, I'm seeing someone else and staying at their house with them and taking care of his kids, but that's another story for another day. He wants to talk to Hunter on the phone to tell him to back off and to leave me alone because I want nothing to do with him. I block his number. I don't download the new texting app to talk to him. In October, I get thrown out of this guy's house because he wants to bring his ex-wife back home because they were in the middle of divorce, but he decides to feel bad and give her another chance. So I'm officially homeless at this point. I call my fiance and I'm like, hey, I don't know what I'm going to do. Me and the boys are officially homeless. I have nowhere to go. He says, how am I going to help you? I'm homeless and living in my van at the same time. But he tells me to hold on a minute and he's going to call the pastor of his church. Pastor of his church calls me and says, hey, I'm going to help you. We're going to get you a hotel room, but I want you to come to church on Sunday with your fiance to hear my sermon and so that I can talk to you and get to know your situation a little more. I go to check into the hotel at 3. My fiance meets me there. We discuss everything.
At this point, this is not no longer a fiance. This is your long-lost baby daddy. Like, what are you talking about? Get my fiance. This is not a fiance anymore, baby. This is the long-lost baby daddy.
What's going on? And yes, I started talking to Hunter again after that. But at this point, I know that me and Hunter aren't going to be together forever. And I'm just basically playing with his emotions at this point. He has me. Yes, it was a wrong decision to make. Yes, I shouldn't have tried to get back at him like I did. Every time I talk to Hunter, I send the text messages over to JC so that we can just laugh about it. And I'm telling her that I'm really not feeling the way I was about him before. Of course, she doesn't believe me and thinks I'm still continuing on the relationship. A little bit, that's what it turned into, but mostly it was just me just laughing at him. And he tells me one day, hey, I'm going to get your name tattooed across my chest. I tell him do what he wants to do, that I can't control him. And if he wants to do that, that's up to him. He goes on video chat with me about a week later with his shirt off. And there it is across his whole chest in letters like this big is my first name. I screenshot it and I send it to JC and we just laugh. Now, still during this time, me and Hunter are still fighting as bad as we were before, but it's gotten worse. He's calling me a terrible mother. He's saying that my kids would be happier if they were no longer in my care. And I know a lot of y'all are going to agree with that. But at the same time, he shouldn't be talking about my children like that when he's never met both of his kids that he has. Me and my fiance are talking about working things out and wanting a good, faithful Christian relationship. I continue to go to this church with him. The pastor asks me if I have any questions for him, and I say I do. I want to meet with you because I'm really angry at everything that's going on in my life, everything that's going on now, and I have questions for you. We have a meeting. He pulls out his Bible and points to all the verses that work with my situation, and he's convinced me that I need to do something different. Obviously, what I'm doing isn't working. So that day, I turn my life over to Christ. I tell Hunter that I've done this, and he basically says, oh, well, now you think you're going to be better than me because you're joining this church, when little do you know I've been in my Bible, and I've been going to church and reading and praying and everything, and I'm sitting there like, okay, well, good for you. Anyone who wants to seek out the Lord is in their right to do so. But obviously I know he's not being serious about it because he's still trying to continue with the sexual text messages, asking details between if there's anything going on with me and my fiance and everything. And then he starts texting me and telling me, I want you to do stuff to me, and that he's willing to do anything that I want him to continue this relationship with me. I play along, I screenshot the messages and I send them to JC, and I just tell him, look, this is what you want, this is what you're going to do, and he was willing to do it. He was willing to be by another man and have stuff up his, to make me happy, to keep us together. As I'm playing along with this, I'm also getting disgusted because he's getting super in detail about it. And I just sent all these messages to JC, and she is blown away. I'm blown away. I don't know what to think. The day of my last court appearance comes, and I go to plead guilty to promoting contraband 1, which is a felony, promoting contraband 2, which is a misdemeanor, and sexual misconduct, which is also a misdemeanor. So I go sign the paperwork for the guilty plea. I get to the podium, and the judge starts asking me all the questions and asks me if I have any mental health issues, and I tell him yes. He asks me to elaborate. I give him my diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, PTSD, and OCD, and he literally looks at me with the most surprised look on his face and asks me if I've disclosed my mental illness to the facility I worked in when I got interviewed, and I tell him yes. Part 10 on how I went from CO to felon. So where I left off, the judge asked me if I had any mental health issues, and I told him yes and told him what they were, and he gave me the most shocked look I've seen anyone give me. So he asked me if I'm in therapy, and I tell him no, I'm not currently at the moment because I was homeless and my main concern was finding a place for me and my children to live after the hotel runs out. We go through all the questions. He asked me if I'm under the influence of anything or if I have any illness, or if someone promised me that the court would go easy on me and that it was up to him essentially to carry out my sentence. I told him no, and I understood that, and he made sure I knew that I was giving up my rights to an appeal. So he sentences me to 5 years probation. Now, in my conditions of supervision, which I was given by someone from probation and parole right after I pled guilty, it states I should not leave my county without permission from my officer, and I inquired about that. So if I want to leave the county on a day pass, I would have to contact them, and I would have to tell them the address of where I'm going, a phone number for where I'm going to be at, and what vehicle that I'm going to be driving. I told her I understood, and she also goes through and tells me I can't go into a bar, a liquor store, or any place that serves alcohol as their primary product. So when I get a job, I cannot work in any of these places either. I cannot drink for 5 years. I cannot consume any substances for 5 years. She also tells me I can't own a firearm, I can't vote, and I can't hold office. I tell her I understood these. She gives me a date to report. So the first day I go and report, I take my pre-sentencing packet with me. We go through it, and it has all this information they want to know, whether it's past trauma, who lives in my home with me, what my friends look like, what my support system looks like. And then they go in depth about my requirement that I cannot visit anyone in a correctional facility or a rehab facility. Now, at first I was under the impression that it was just physical face-to-face visits. That's when she tells me, no, it includes video chats, texting, calling, all of that. So in my head, I'm sitting here like, okay, I need to cut off all communication with Hunter because I don't want to violate and I don't want to end up locked up. She also tells me if I have any police contact for any reason, if I get pulled over, if the police get to call to my house or anything, I have 72 hours to report that to her. And if I don't, it could end up with a sanction, could possibly end up with me serving up to 10 days in jail. I can't leave the state. I can't communicate with any other felons. And so I'm sitting here going, I need to straighten up and I need to cut off everything. So the more that I go to this church and the more that I'm coming in good relationships with everybody in my church family and my group, I realize that what I'm doing with Hunter, with playing with his emotions and making fun of him and encouraging him to begin a homosexual relationship with someone, is completely wrong. So I repent my sins and I ask for forgiveness. November 13 comes along and we have a corporate prayer meeting at church where I put my family on the prayer list because that Monday the hotel is running out and we won't have anywhere to go. I tried to go to a homeless shelter, but it was just so unsafe for me and my boys that the leaders in the church, other people in my church family, and my fiance all come together and realize I need to get out of there and it's not a safe place for me. So I was there for 2 hours before my fiance comes back and gets me. The day after this corporate prayer meeting, I get a phone call from someone in my church family and they ask me if I'm sitting down because they have extremely good news for me. I asked them what's going on, and then I am sitting down, and they say, hey, we have a house for you. Y'all be able to move in on Monday. Our discipleship pastor heard y'all's need, called his uncle that has a house up for rent that is empty, and he would love to rent it to you guys because he loves your story of how you went from sinners to turning your life over to Christ, and that y'all are working to better your eternal soul. I'm bawling my eyes out, and I'm just saying thank you over and over again because it was literally a prayer answered. We go to see the house that Saturday. Everything's good. We move in on Monday. Everything has been great so far. Our church family has provided us with almost all the furniture we need. We had nothing when we moved into this house. So we're in the house for a couple days, and my fiance decides that he's going to go switch our phone carriers because our phone bill is stupid expensive, and we can't afford that at the moment. So he takes my phone with him to the store to go get a different one, and there's a text message from JC that comes through and says, hey, I'm messing with Hunter pretending it's you. Don't message him back if he texts you. And at this point, his number was blocked, so he couldn't text me anyway. My fiance comes back and he asks me what's going on and why am I getting this text message. I tell him that, yes, I was talking to him, but I don't want a relationship with him. I'm completely done with him. And at that point, I was tired of everything. I was tired of going through what I was going through with him. And I also, like I said before, didn't want to violate and end up in jail and serving any jail time. So we have a discussion. He tells me it's my last chance, and if I mess up again, that he's not going to help me anymore and we're just going to move on. I tell him I want to marry him. I tell him that I'm so appreciative for the man that he's become and how much he's grown up in the last 6 months that we were split up, and that I was talking to Hunter, which this is true. I was still talking to Hunter because I wasn't sure if he was going to be the man that he was and that he wasn't going to change fully. I realized that he has. So the next day we went and got completely new phones. So now, Hunter doesn't know where I live. He doesn't have any way to communicate with me, and I want to keep it that way because I'm not risking anything anymore for him. I'm finally seeing the light, and I'm seeing that I've made so many bad decisions, and I'm not willing to go through that anymore. Thank you for those who have followed me through this story. I know it was long and long-winded, but I'm trying to give you all a glimpse of my mental state at the time. And at the time, I didn't believe that I was doing anything wrong, and yes, I blamed a lot of it on him. But now, I admit, I broke the law. I deserve the punishment that I got, and I got severely lucky when I didn't get arrested for it. So, for y'all saying that I don't take accountability, I'm telling the story of how I was thinking at the time. Now, yes, I broke the law. Yes, I committed multiple sins. Yes, I cheated on my fiance, and it wasn't right. We shouldn't have done the spiral that we went down through. But I'm telling my story in hopes that it'll reach somebody and that they make better decisions than I did. Long story short, don't be me. Make better choices. Cut off all communication with someone who's not good for you. You need to respect yourself more than I did. It is required in my probation that I seek mental health counseling, and I am working on doing that. I'm just trying to find a place that's a good fit for me. I've been in and out of therapy most of my life, and it's not always worked out the best for me. But be true to yourself. Respect yourself. Love yourself more than I did. I handled this situation completely wrong. I should have reported it the first time he started communicating with me in a way that was inappropriate for my situation. And to all law enforcement officers, current, former, and retired correctional officers, I want to talk to you specifically for a second. I'm sorry for the embarrassment that I have caused the field that you are in. I'm sorry that I've become the poster child of what not to do, and I'm sorry that I disrespected everybody. When I took the job, I thought I was a lot stronger mentally than I was, but now I realize that I should have never taken the job in the first place. I should have went to therapy, I should have made myself stronger, and I should have not put myself or my children in this situation. You all may think I'm a bad person, and that's totally understandable. I can be labeled as a bad person, but I am trying to learn and grow from my mistakes, and hopefully y'all can see that. But thank you all for following with me on this journey. Thank you for being patient and sticking it out. I know I can get long-winded. I know it can get boring at times. and I truly am trying to work on that. This is just my first series of videos that I've posted. I have other ideas for videos I want to post, and I will ask for opinions on those. Also, I just want to say, do better. Be better than me. Be smarter than me. And if y'all really want, I will drop a picture of Hunter here of one that I have.
Oh my goodness, MessyFam. Now, I know she tried to do it quickly, so we're going to repost that image of Hunter. This is what Hunter looks like. This is the guy that she had the prison incident with. MessyFam, what are y'all thoughts? What are y'all thoughts on this? This was an emotional roller coaster for me. I could not hide my reaction. Oh my goodness. But at the end of the day, I'm just happy that everything worked out for her and her kids. They end up finding a place to live, and she don't have to live in a homeless shelter. That's a plus. I just didn't understand a lot of parts of the video, but I think we got some clarity throughout. Now, this was a roller coaster. She was saying a lot, from Hunter to dating another man with a wife, and I just feel like she had a lot going on. I know for a fact when that judge heard that this lady had mental illness issues, I know that call to the sergeant that hired her, or whoever that person that runs the prison. I know that call was crazy, because how do you have someone who has mental health issues working in your facility? You're just as guilty as she is. That's why the judge was so thrown off, because he's trying to figure out why is she even working in a facility. She's supposed to be here. Is it qualifications to be here? You're in here with felons, man. Why would you put somebody in here with these type of illnesses, mental illnesses, that can potentially be taken advantage of? I don't know, Messy family, but what do you think? If you made it this far in the video, let me know in the comment section below. This one was a lot to unravel. I think I said a lot throughout the video, so there's nothing else I need to say. Don't forget to like this video, share it, and hit that notification bell so that way you never miss another upload from Messy Stories. All right, Messy fam, until the next vid. Peace.